Okay, so this is my presentation. It's about transitions, animations in JavaScript. Okay, and so with animations, it allows us to change the property and values to go smoothly over a given duration. And animations are mainly triggered by user interactions. Or actually, this is transitions. I don't know how this one got over here, but transitions are mainly the ones that are triggered by user interaction. And so, like a couple of days ago, Dan went over the syntax, and it's pretty straightforward. It's a selector, transition, property, and durations that are mainly needed. And he also went over how to trigger them with like the hover. Okay. And so there's a few ways to trigger them with JavaScript. We can use buttons, or there can also be like JavaScript events like on mouse over or on mouse out. Okay, and with animations. So animations, it lets an element gradually change from one style to another without JavaScript or Flash. And so animations require something, and that is keyframes. And so when you specify CSS styles inside the keyframes rule, the animation will gradually change from the current style to the new style at certain times. To get an animation to work, you must bind the animation to an element, and keyframes hold what styles the element will have at certain times. And so here's like a sample syntax with the animations. We see the keyframes, and that's what the style is going to change from and to. And down here we can see it is being binded by this one's being binded to the keyframes example. And so the main differences between animation and transitions. Okay, so transitions are like usually triggered by the users with like certain events, such as like having a mouse over or pressing a button. Looping is not convenient with transitions, and transitions are usually used more often. With animations, they are usually triggered automatically without the user. So like when the page loads, and it does have a capability of looping. And you can also change as many CSS properties you want, as many times as you want. And so I wrote like an example of this. Let's see. Okay, so here we see two different things. So here we have a box that has the on mouse over, and this on mouse over has a function. All of these have the same function. This one is to change color, and the buttons right here also change the colors. Um, so if we see it in action right now, it does not have the transition effect because it's currently off. But if we turn it on, we can see that we can change the transition effects, or we can see it. And here we can see the transition is in between having the background colors, two different colors. And if we turn it off, we can see that the colors change instantly instead of having a transition. And so this diff box has a on mouse over event, and these buttons have the on clicks. Okay. And so on to the animation. This is the animation. It is very, very similar to this, but the difference to the one on W3 Schools and mine is that W3 Schools uses pure JavaScript to make that box go to the bottom right corner. And animations kind of takes that away from from the syntax. It doesn't really require JavaScript because we can use the keyframes. And so here we see that my animation, that's the little tiny red box, is not binded right now. But down here, I have the button that binds it. And it's this one right here, the animate div. When I click on that, it's going to pass in true. And so what that is going to do is it's going to add the bind to the move keyframes for 5 seconds, infinite, and the style is going to be linear. So if I animate that, it's going to animate and keep looping and going back and forth. And so with that being said, we can see the difference between keyframes and JavaScript. It's essentially the same thing, but written a little bit different. And this is a JavaScript version, but this is a keyframes version of this animation. And yeah, those are the ways that I found about triggering the effects of transitions and animations. And that is my presentation. Is there any questions?
That was awesome. Thanks. I didn't know that that you could do that. The animations with CSS with the keyframe. That's pretty neat. Learn something new.
Yeah, that's the pretty neat part.
So you can do that to make it move. Can you like change the size and do other things with that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're able to change the size with the keyframes.
Yeah, so it'll eventually loop back though to its original state.
Yeah, that's true.
So the animation is like you said in the presentation, it was like it's more like a loop or a continuous movement. They're not specifically intended to like be initiated with an event trigger. Typically, they just go. But you can pretty much do whatever you want, and you can make the element do whatever you want within that animation.
So, a question for you guys: do you know for this class which style of animation will be evaluated on?
I think both.
Play both. Okay.
I think he wants maybe one with transitions and one with animations. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I was talking about like JavaScript versus CSS for animation.
Oh, probably CSS.
From CSS, huh? Yeah.
I'll give you one.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so yeah, I found it pretty neat that we're able to do animations just with keyframes instead of just JavaScript.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's a lot of code to do it with JavaScript.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So on that note, I guess I've got a little animation that I can show off too. Nothing fancy really, but pull it up for you guys. Give me a second here. All right, can you see the checkerboard?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, great. So since last time, all I really did was kind of reorganize this, and I picked, I actually used a transform as my method for doing the animation because the transform will actually do things a little smoother. So I just threw in here that I'm going to do a rotate, and I'm using a counter, so it's doing this modulo, and then it's subtracting that value from 10 to determine how much to wiggle, because I'm using like a wiggle kind of movement here. So up here, let's see. Yeah, so I just changed this to an on touch end, but because I'm going to do this in the regular browser to show you guys, I'll just comment that out and reload this. So on click, it's going to wiggle. That's all it really does. So we already have our existing hover behavior. But if I click one, it'll shake it or wiggle it. So nothing too fancy, but and one thing that is kind of cool about this is I'm sending over the sender and the event args with it, and so in the animate stuff function, I can grab the sender and get the target of the event. In this case, it's the div that I'm clicking on, and so that's the element that I'm acting upon. So this will work for anything that that has that on click attached to the animation, the animate stuff function, as long as it's passing the sender. So it's kind of convenient. That's pretty much it.
Cool, man.
Oh, here's another little ditty for you. So the clear animation or clear interval right here. What I found was like sometimes the animation isn't completely clean because of the rotation angle, right? So like if I take that out, I think this will mess up a little bit, and you'll see. Did it not reload? Oh, maybe not. Oh yeah, you can sort of see it. These are a little askew. Do you see them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think I had messed with it like with 100 or something like that too, and it was off more. There you go. So if I do a bunch of these, you'll see they get all messed up. So that's why I introduced that
Clear interval.
no, the rotate to 0 degrees. Right there, because the clear interval just stops the animation,
right.
But sometimes the state that it stops the animation in is not its original state. So if that's what you're aiming for, it's better to actually set the value, like hard set the value there. And you might be able to do that with an animation or something. I haven't explored that, but with a CSS animation, I mean. But yeah,
cool.
That's all I got for you guys.
Thanks, man.
Sure.
Anybody have any questions? All right, cool.